I am in Nova Scotia, Canada, which is unceded and the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today, we're talking about intergenerational trauma and resilience. One of the things that came to mind as well as when I was working with this is also the beliefs that are carried on through generations. So we'll look a little bit at that as well. So one of our favorites, Dr. Gabor Mate, talking about how human beings are trying to come more and more the emergence of this self-regulated human being who can be kind and compassionate and connected with other human beings in a social context. And it refers back to Stephen Porges' quote around safety is an absence of danger plus a feeling of connection, that we're really wired for this. And as children, we don't have the brain development to do that on our own. We need well-regulated adults who can see us and care about us and protect us, but also who can really get to know us. And this attuned empathy of responding to the child's emotional cues. And that's something that we carry through into our healing work as adults. Can I be attentive to my own emotional cues? And that's a big part of what mindfulness practice is all about, of course. It's such a beautiful picture of a baby and a mom really attuned with each other. And we need those emotional attunements, those feelings of safety, the feelings of connection, in order to develop a healthy brain and nervous system. And if we don't have that, then we develop regulation in terms of self-protection so that we can try and keep ourselves alive and safe, but we don't develop the neural networks for trust. And so we don't naturally then turn to another person for comfort. This is also the root of a lot of addictions and problems with compulsions, and we get into the fight, flight, freeze. And we don't really give ourselves the opportunity to be known because we're kind of in a state of freeze, or we're in a state of that's too much for me. When we're looking at how we were raised, it has such a huge impact on our adult life. And we can trace it all the way through from grandparents, parents, our parents, us as parents, our childhood. All of that really flows through our life. And one of the tricky parts about working around intergenerational trauma is that we can really develop the capacity to see our parents and grandparents as people who had their own sets of experiences and trauma, intergenerational trauma, and resilience comes through from generation to generation, obviously, and then forward from us into future generations as well. And that there's no expectation here that we're jumping to any kind of forgiveness, that we're jumping to no boundaries. It's not a sappy kind of compassion. We're really working with honesty, clarity, compassion for ourselves, connection within ourselves. And from there, going into some kind of connection. It might be in person, it might not be, but that there's no right or wrong way to do this. The priority here is our own understanding and our own connection. But one of the things that we can see is that we have these large social and historical contexts that we live our lives within those. So when we look at intergenerational trauma, if we had a parent or grandparent who had PTSD from being in a war, if we had a mother who was unhappy about being forced out of the workforce after World War II, or a grandmother, we have those have large implications for someone's personal life as well as how they come down through the generations. So it's helpful to just look and see. So we're going to pause here now and have a look at some of the big historical and cultural circumstances from our parents and grandparents. So I'm older than many people here and younger than some people here. So my experience is like everybody else. We have a certain historical timeline here. So my mom grew up in the Depression. She had a lot of beliefs that came from that were passed on to us as everybody else does. And so, what we're going to work with now for just 3 or 4 minutes, so we'll give ourselves a decent amount of time for this. Really take a look at what was your parents' situation, what was your grandparents' situation. So, what era did they come? Did they grow up in? So, if your parents grew up in the 60s and 70s, they might have some of that free love, anti-establishment. They might not have. Not everybody in any generation has the predominant experience. Nuclear war was a big threat. There's certain conditions that happen. So just place your parents and maybe your grandparents as well in the context that they were in. And COVID-19 is something that will define all of us, no matter where we are in the generational part of this, a child, early adult, older adult. And just like that, wars really affect a whole generation. And one of the differences can be if your parent or grandparent was in the Vietnam War, their experience would have been very different because there was not societal approval, widespread approval for that. There was a lot of pushing, shaming military people. And that's a big contrast to World War II and after 9/11, when there's this patriotic fervor to protect our countries, to protect ourselves. And people who went to war were seen as heroes. So, just to look at some of the big cultural events, but also some of the nuances around those two. Social justice movements, similar. So, as we begin, we're really just looking at what was their experience. How did the times they lived in affect their experience? And as we look at that, we can see some of the beliefs that they formed. We always form beliefs based on our experience. Sometimes we'll work with more personal things like, I didn't feel loved and included, and now I have a belief that I'm unlovable, the core deficiency beliefs. But there are all kinds of beliefs that are formed this way. So in prior generations, the feeling was you worked for a good company, you kept that job. Didn't matter if you had satisfaction or meaning in the job. And that's a contrast now to a lot of people who are looking for meaning and who aren't willing to work at jobs that are not satisfying. So, looking at the beliefs, and then what did you take on? Because we can't help being conditioned by the beliefs and the values of our parents. What did I challenge? What do I accept? But what were those beliefs? What are some of the beliefs that I can see the through line from grandparents, parents to me, and maybe to my children if I have any? And stay mindful of your response in your body, your breath. If you're having some intensity, you could always tap on your forehead for a moment. Take your attention into the sound and the sensation of the tapping and away from the thoughts. You could do some deeper breaths. And then let's now bring it to their personal lives. And again, we're not looking to explain away things or forgive people. That's not really what we're doing here at all. What we're just looking at is what were some of the forces that shaped them? What were their personal lives like as children? And when we look at that, we can include all kinds of things that are very common, like addiction, violence, mental or physical health. If you had a sibling, or if they had a sibling who died, my grandmother had a sibling who died in the flu epidemic of 1918. And she talked about her often. So you can see how these experiences flow through. Some of them are traumatic, not fitting in, a parent in prison. Some of them might be immigration. My parents immigrated here, my grandparents did, or I did. To look at some of the larger context and how did that fit in with their lives when they were children. Maintain awareness of your body and your breath, that we're in here doing an inquiry. Our personal circumstances are not what their circumstances were in the past. But remain aware that we're doing an inquiry. And we might also look at the circumstances in their lives when they became parents. Were they planning to become parents? Was it unplanned? Were they very young? Were they older, more established? And this is a little bit trickier. Do you have a sense of their aspiration and hope for your future? So sometimes parents would really put a lot of pressure on children. You need to go to college, you need to make the family proud. Other times there was more of a blank slate there. It didn't really seem to matter to them. Or maybe your parents were so wrapped up in their own lives that you didn't really feel seen or that you mattered really much. Because this is more personal, it can also feel more activating or triggering. So maintain this awareness in your body, inhaling and exhaling, let your breath stabilize your attention. Open your eyes. You could put images or thoughts on the wall on the other side of the room. Notice that this is an image, this is words I'm hearing. During an inquiry, there's always this balance of staying present as a witness and staying in our body and going deeply into the inquiry. And if we look at some of what was going on in their personal lives, we can sometimes see how that flowed through. A parent who is depressed, for instance, might be your grandparents, your parents. You might have something similar going on. So there are these vulnerabilities and patterns that we inherit. Some of it's biological, epigenetics, the way our genes express. Some of it is conditioning. Sometimes when there's violence or addiction in a home, the children have a strong determination to never let that happen to them and their children. Other times there's a repeating of a pattern. And there might be strengths too. And oftentimes in my family, we'll say the Fraser women are tough. It's not necessarily healthy in a sense of we can survive hard times, but why are we in those hard times? Still, there might be some family sayings or family strengths that you can also pull into this picture. We inherit beliefs, vulnerabilities, strengths, resilience. We'll sit with this for a couple of more minutes, just really looking into this complexity. Breathe, relax, stay present. And this is something that could benefit from longer periods of reflection or circling back to some of this. And it'll be up on YouTube within a few days if you want to come back to this. One of the things that we have in common is larger systems of oppression and good old fashioned family values, which some people are thinking were great, and some things about it were. But the family unit used to be this, we had this sense that that was where you were protected, that everybody worked together for the common good. And that's, of course, not the situation that it was for many people. So it really relied on the man of the house who was paid more, and the women who were also often pressured into being housewives, as they were called. But if the man was not well regulated, if he was addicted, mentally ill, abusive, or a bully, then it was hard to challenge his authority. And many women stayed in situations that were very difficult and dangerous. And that's still the situation today. Living in the patriarchy comes along with a whole set of issues and vulnerabilities, fears, situations. So, understanding the roots of our parents' unresolved trauma doesn't mean that we change our relationship with them. And it doesn't mean that that we discount the fact. So, you might have had a mother who you had a difficult relationship with because she was really shut down. And maybe now as an adult, you can look at that and go, okay, I can see that dad was a bully. She didn't have a lot of emotional or social space in the family. I can see that some of the influences on her. So what we're not doing here is we're not minimizing or discounting our own experience. So we can hold the complexity of both. Of yes, it was difficult. I can see that my dad was a bully because he was bullied, or because we can understand the circumstances and the parameters of things, and at the same time hold the truth that our experience was difficult. There was abuse, neglect, whatever your personal experience was, and that's something that we don't need to discount or minimize. We can hold that to be true as well. Let's take a moment to really come back into our heart. Notice what you've been looking at over this last several minutes. Intergenerational trauma, patterns, conditioning is very complex. And often we have a huge amount of grief that we don't really attend to, perhaps as well as we could. So, just the profound losses that come from living in a family where we were ignored, or where we were bullied, or where there was violence or fear, addiction, all of those things. If you want, you could put your hands on your heart. Keep noticing your breath. and feeling in our bodies what it is that we've been inquiring into. And then keeping that, maintaining that awareness. Understanding someone doesn't necessarily mean we change their boundaries. We might have someone that we can understand. Maybe there's a sense of compassion or empathy for parents or grandparents. There also has to be a realism about this. Many adults are not mature, they're not emotionally well developed, they're not kind, they're not patient, they're not connected, and they might be in a state of fight, flight, freeze. And they might not be safe for us to be around. Or there might be some kind of parameters in which, we are around them during the day, but not in the evening once they're drinking. Or some people are estranged from families for very good reasons. And so we're not pretending that everything's okay. And we're not pretending that people are more healed than they are. And this could be our adult children, our siblings, our parents. Not everybody is capable of having a relationship that's going to work for us. And that's not on us. And sit with for a moment here. Is there a sense of, given their circumstances, their life, all of the things we were just looking at, and their level of awareness? And sometimes that might mean, I know that this person doesn't have the ability to really stay with the hard things, the difficult things, the harm they caused me. And I know that that's the truth for them. So, given their level of awareness and their circumstances, could they have done something different? Could they have done anything different from what they actually did? We want them to have done it differently, that's for sure. We can see so much of the loss and grief would not have happened if they'd been stronger, more attuned, more willing, if they'd been different. Given our assessment now using the whole of our brain, our conscious mind, our knowing now, we know so much more about psychology and addiction and different things than we did 30, 50, 80 years ago. What is your sense of that? Could they have actually done anything different from what they did? And one way to work with that might be to look at situations in our own personal lives where we know what we want to do, we know what we should do, and somehow we don't. It might be something kind of innocuous, like I know I should go to bed at 10, but I often stay up watching violent TV shows until midnight, and then I'm tired and cranky. So it could be something kind of innocuous like that, or it could be something bigger. I really want to be well regulated around my child, and I find I lose it sometimes. So we could consider this question: could I do anything differently than what I do? And use tapping, box breathing, use any of the tools you need to stay present. These are difficult things to hold the complexity of a human being in a lifetime. And our goal is not to forgive or anything like that. Our goal is just to see. And sometimes we feel if we really understand or have empathy for someone that we're going to fall into a trap and we're going to let them back in, or it's going to be difficult or damaging. And so we don't have to do that. We're really just looking, what are some of the elements here that I could consider? As much as we want it to be different than it is, what is the reality? And notice how that feels in your heart. Notice if anything in your body tightened up or relaxed and softened. And then let that kind of move to a settled place. We can come back to it later if you wanted to. So, this question, when we're looking at intergenerational trauma, what do we owe our family, is something that doesn't have a right or wrong answer, for one thing. And it's something that can change. It's something that's definitely changed for me as I've moved through the different decades in my life. And how could we just kind of sit with this? And some of what we're sitting with is some people are not capable of change. They're not interested in it. They've proven that many times. One of the examples I sometimes use is that my mother was very uncomfortable when I would try to share emotionally. And after a long period of time, I backed away from that, and we developed a much kinder relationship, I think, with her when I didn't try to force emotional intimacy that she wasn't comfortable with. So, not as a blaming or shaming thing, it's just more of an acknowledgement, adult to adult. What is the real assessment? And we were just kind of looking at that a moment ago. What's our assessment of what this person is capable of, and how do I want to engage with them? This is really all we can do, is just, what's my side of the street? How can I be not participating in a difficult or harmful relationship? We have the right, and to take the space that we need, and to have a relationship that works for us, to be honest if we feel like that's what we want to do, to put boundaries around them if that's what we want to do. We have the right to do all of those things. And we can also really just acknowledge that this is difficult, especially family of origin relationships. They really hurt. If we're estranged, or if we're partially estranged, which is often the way that it works with people, we share some things with family and we don't share a lot with family. We share different things with friends. We don't really let them know who we are or get too vulnerable, because that feels like it's too dangerous. We have really a lot of mixed feelings. We love them, we're angry with them, we don't want anything to do with them, we wish they would change. There's all kinds of things going on. Let's sit with that just for a moment. Take some deep breaths. And acknowledge to yourself that there's no right or wrong answer to this. Nobody else gets to decide this for us. And then come back to your heart. Breathe, regulate your system. We'll just take a minute or two here to sit with the complexity and how our intergenerational history and experiences affect us. They affect all kinds of things in our lives. Did we have a certain kind of career? Did we follow our dreams? Did we marry a person who was harmful to us? There's so many different ways. Fight, flight, freeze responses affect our relationships now. And we inherited all of these circumstances. They're in our personality, they're deeply in our conditioning. And now we're really sitting with an adult, a more adult understanding. What is it? What are some of the complexities, some of the forces that shaped my grandparents, my parents, my life, my children? And can I stay here, present in my own heart? I'm open to new possibilities of healing that don't follow any agenda. I'm worth getting to know. I'm worth being authentic and honest with people. I'm worth having nourishing relationships, whether it's with family or other people. I can stay present and connected with myself.